our first mission is Project Keep Me Safe. Both Jill and I have kids who are autistic, and the wandering and elopement with children who have autism is a big concern. And so we decided to do Project Keep Me Safe about 4 weeks ago, or so, which is a little crazy. But both Jill and I are in what's called PLTI, which is Parent Leadership Training Institute, and it is a 20-week course to try to instill leadership skills, advocacy, and just a community of parents. And we're doing that over in Windsor Locks. And we found that on the webpage of SpedPAC here in Suffield, and Jill and I and Amy, right over there, decided to come on over, and we met some of these wonderful people over here that have come to support us. And so we have to do a community project. So we said, okay, let's try to bring awareness, and it fostered into Project Keep Me Safe. And it's essentially a 3-part program. Part 1 is we hired a trainer to come in and train first responders, fire, EMS, and police. We just had our first training last Friday for the police. It was 4-hour training, and it was very well attended. And the police also got CEUs, I'm not sure if that's exactly what they call them, for their time there as well. And then fire and EMS are getting trained on May 8th. At 6:30 to 8:30. Second part, because we wanted to make it comprehensive, was a community presentation, which obviously that is what you all here for. And we have Wendy Fournier from the National Autism Association. She came all the way from Rhode Island to help us kind of bring awareness to the community on the safety risks of elopement and wandering in the autistic community, and see how we can keep these kids safer. And then the third part of the project, our community project, is to do Light Suffield Up Blue Day. Kind of celebrate not only these special kids that we have, but also the community that we live in. We have been widely accepted and supported by our friends, our family, our school district, and the businesses here. So we thought, what better way to do this but maybe have a small celebration on the greens, ice cream social with blue everything, blue glow sticks, blue beach balls that light up, necklaces, and things such as that. So that is what we tried to do in a short period of time. And we are hoping, and it is our desire, to keep this foundation going in every year, picking a different cause or adding on to this one. So thank you very, very much for coming. We appreciate it. We appreciate your support. And as we have said before, if we can keep one child safe, then this was all worth it. So thank you.
And wear your blue shirt Friday.
Well, I want to commend you guys on the work that you're doing. I think it's amazing, and I love that you're touching on this safety issue because it is so important, and so many of our kids are dying in the autism community. So congratulations on the work that you're doing. You should be really proud of yourselves, and keep it up. And you know, for you to decide 4 weeks ago you're going to put together a program and pull it together, that's what being an autism mom is all about, because we just kick it for our kids. So, yay to you.
Thank you.
And dads. Dads too, I don't want to leave out the dads. Dads rock. Okay, so I'm going to start by showing you a video. To show you a video that we put together on this topic. It was a while back. Autism rates have changed since we made this video, but it's going to give you an idea of why we do the work that we do at the National Autism Association, and why this subject is so important for us to address.
There you see Nadia right there as she's being carried out. What a wonderful and happy ending to this. At NAA, we do tend to focus more on the severe side of autism.
I know, you're very frustrated.
Our autism is seizures, headbanging, insomnia, crippling bowel disease, debilitating fear, overwhelming sensory dysfunction, height and self-injury. It defines human beings, young and old, who are severely impacted, and the families who live in constant prevention and survival mode. The National Autism Association is a parent-run organization. This issue hits home for us. My son has wandered from multiple school settings. Our president at NAA, Wendy Fournier, her daughter is an active wanderer. We know how hard it is to keep our kids safe. There's a huge lack of resources. It's why NAA has created safety initiatives like the Big Red Safety Box, our Found program, the Aware Collaboration, and autismsafety.org. Autism parents are strong, we're very dedicated. And there's so little resources for these families. And what you do when you live next to a pond, your child is constantly trying to get to the pond. We tell first responders to search water first. A lot of times our kids will not respond to verbal commands. They won't respond to their name. They won't respond to stop. So you have to just get in there and get them. You look at Ryan's story, you look at the video, you see a happy ending. You also have to look at that video and imagine if that person wasn't there with Ryan. Listen to Ryan's cries and know there were so many children who have died this way without even the ability to cry out for help. We have to learn from those children, honor their stories, make sure that it doesn't happen to other children. These deaths are preventable.
These deaths are preventable, and that's what we're going to talk about tonight. I have seen that video 100 times. I still cry. I can't watch it. Okay. So we'll start with an overview on wandering, the issue itself, and what's been done to address it so far. This was something that was not really on anybody's radar not too long ago. Our organization started seeing news stories and having experiences with our own children, and we started realizing that it wasn't, isolated incidents. It was actually happening to a lot of families, and kids were going missing, and unfortunately a lot of kids were dying. And so we started to put together some resources, and we reached out for assistance through our federal health agencies to try to get resources developed for families, for caregivers, and try to get training for anybody who is caring for somebody with autism to help keep them safe. So some of the things that we've done over the years is reached out to the Interagency Autism Coordinating Committee at the National Institutes of Health. We gave a presentation there, And unfortunately, this committee didn't actually do anything with the information that we provided to them. However, with the contacts that we made that day at that meeting, we were able to pull together a couple of different organizations, including the National Autism Association, and get a study done very quickly on just how common wandering is. Because if you're going to ask for resources for something, you have to justify your ask. And up until that point, there was no data on how often this was happening in the community. So that's what we did. We had a study done, and it ended up being published in 2012 in the journal Pediatrics, which is the journal of the American Academy of Pediatrics. And we got some great information from that. Another important thing that we were able to do, and this is important for you to know if you're a caregiver, is that we asked the CDC if they could create a medical diagnosis code, because we believe that wandering and elopement behaviors are actually a medical issue that's associated with autism. And it's not a choice, it's not a bad behavior, it's not neglectful parenting. This is something that is absolutely uncontrollable for our kids. It is a medical disorder. And we knew that there was already a medical diagnosis code for elderly people with dementia or Alzheimer's, and yet there was nothing for our kids. And we were successful in getting that. So now there is a diagnosis code. It's an ICD-9 code B40.31. And if you go to your physician, your child can have that diagnosis assigned to them if it's appropriate, and that can, in some cases, help you to get resources to help protect your child, whether it's a tracking system, you can try to get Medicaid to cover it, or even if you're having trouble with safety issues in school, you can use this as a tool in your IEP meetings and to show this is a real issue my child is having, and we need accommodations to support this medical issue. So you guys have handouts, you can look through that. I'm not going to go through the whole thing. This is a study in pediatrics that was published, and some of the data that came out of that study. So we had been seeing just anecdotal evidence in the community and knew that we had to do something about it. But when these numbers came back, we were like, wow, they're impactful. We found that 49% of children with autism do wander or bolt from safe settings. This is 4 times the rate of their unaffected siblings. So the reason we ask this question is, toddlers, if you have a 2 or 3-year-old, they may wander out the door. That's the kind of typical toddler behavior that's going to happen. But the reason we asked this particular question in the study is because we wanted to show that the siblings of these children with autism weren't going missing, they weren't dying, because they did have good parents. So this is not an issue of neglectful parenting. Our kids are like little Houdinis, and if you take your eyes off your child, it can happen in a matter of seconds. You can lose your child, and I'm going to tell you some stories, some case studies later on about how that it has happened to so many parents, and really tragic outcomes have happened because of it. So by asking that question, do the unaffected siblings also wander or elope, that gave us some insight to, and some ammunition to say, look, this is not a parenting issue. This is something that's going on in autism, and we need to address it. Half of the families reported that they had never received any kind of professional advice or guidance regarding wandering. So when you go and you have your child evaluated and you get an autism diagnosis, you're basically never or rarely told by a physician, hey, you need to be aware of this, kids do engage in wandering and elopement behaviors and need to be prepared. They don't tell us that. The schools, the service providers, nobody was telling us that. Nobody was giving us the information. So parents were very unprepared. 40% of parents reported suffering sleep disruption due to fear of their child wandering. We have stories from parents who, one mom could not sleep at night unless she would move her couch and block the front door of the house with the couch, and she would sleep on the couch. That was the only way that she could sleep and know for sure that her child was not going to get out. He was a nighttime wanderer. He would get up in the middle of the night and she couldn't sleep. Sleep disruption, sleep disorders are so common in the autism community anyway. I mean, how many of you are parents in this room? How many of you feel sleep deprived? 17 years. Who can watch my kids so I can take a nap? It really is an issue, and when wandering is thrown into the mix, it's especially hard because you just feel like you never rest. I kind of relate it to when you first have a baby and you have this superhuman hearing thing going on when you have an infant, and you just wake up. It's like you're totally tuned into the baby, and every time they move or they just whimper a little bit, you're like right there, you're awake. And that eventually goes away as your baby gets older and becomes a toddler. But with our kids with autism, we keep that. We have that one ear open all the time. So even when we do get sleep, it's not really restful sleep. 58% of parents reported that wandering and elopement was the most stressful of all of the behaviors associated with autism spectrum disorder that they were dealing with their children. More than a third of children with ASD are not able to communicate their name, their phone number, where they live. So if they were found by someone in the community, they'd have no way of telling them where they belong, where they're supposed to be. So we wanted to know why kids were wandering, and in this particular study, it was, the information was coming from parents, so they were telling us what they thought was going on. And these are the answers that they gave. The parents said that their child was trying to reach a place that he or she enjoys, trying to escape an anxious situation, pursuing their special topic, trying to escape uncomfortable sensory stimuli, which is a biggie for a lot of our kids. That's why a lot of our kids wear headphones. You'll see many kids that have autism that wear noise-canceling headphones just because they really need to muffle the sound so that they can focus and not feel stressed and overwhelmed. If you have had those moments, and I'm sure every single person in this room has had them, when you feel like your senses are being attacked. You may be sitting in your own living room and your husband has the TV on too loud, and your teenager has Lady Gaga blaring in the next room, and the dishwasher is running, and the phone is ringing, and the dog is barking, and there's all of these things coming, and you just want it to stop. You just want quiet. It's like that Calgon, take me away kind of a feeling. And for our kids, we're able to kind of self-regulate and bring ourselves back and, do whatever we have to do to get some relief from that. But for our kids, they're not able to regulate that feeling. It's very difficult for them. And that causes, a lot of times that will cause a kid to bolt. There's a difference between wandering and elopement, and that I'm going to talk to you a little bit about. But when you become overwhelmed, you're just thinking to yourself, I need to get out of here right now. And a lot of the most dangerous cases that have happened have been cases like that. So wandering is typically a form of communication, just like all behavior is a form of communication. When a child wanders, it's their way of saying that they need something, they want something, or they don't want something. But they have no other way to communicate it effectively, so they just go. The dangers of wandering are pretty obvious. Drowning is definitely number one. Exposure to the elements has taken several lives in the autism community. Traffic injuries, we're seeing that actually more and more often the last couple of years. Falls. A secondary risk is physical restraint. If somebody with autism is found by a first responder who is not trained and doesn't understand that this is a person with autism and they're not responding to verbal commands, that could lead to this child being restrained somehow, or possibly even arrested, put into a police car. So that's why the police and the first responder training is so very important. So we just put out some data a couple of weeks ago. We have been collecting data for 6 years now. And we get it from media reports because there's no reporting system for wandering incidents in the autism community. So the only way that we hear about these wandering stories is when they hit the media. They don't typically hit the media unless they're a very serious case. So the child has been missing for a good amount of time. There's a big search effort that's already happening. These are the cases that are getting to the media. So we believe that our data is probably a tiny portion of the actual number of cases, because I've had a couple of instances with my own daughter that, you know, the police weren't involved, and, you know, obviously the media wasn't involved. She got out of the house, we, you know, found her right away, and, you know, that was the end of that. So there are probably so many of those cases that are, you know, that we are just completely unaware of. So our data, keep in mind that this is probably very likely a very small fraction of the actual cases. So since 2011, we've collected and analyzed over 800 autism-related missing person cases that were serious enough to get into the media. Nearly a third of those cases they resulted in death or in the individual requiring medical attention. And over 80% of the lethal cases involved children aged 14 and under. So the younger the child was, the higher the risk was that they were not going to be going home. 71% of these cases, these wandering-related cases, the deaths were caused by drowning, and 18% of these deaths were caused by being struck by a vehicle. So we looked at the settings from where individuals with autism might elope. Where were the most common settings in all of these media stories that this person eloped from? Number one was home, a school setting or a school bus, a relative or a friend's home, an outdoor recreation area, a field trip or a camp type of a setting, and group homes or residential facilities. The most common times of wandering and elopement incidents are during transitions, times that there's stress involved, chaos, commotion. Most common times are between the hours of 9 p.m. and 9 a.m. These are the hours that we should all be sleeping and getting that rest that we so desperately need, but this is the time that our kids are most at risk. While playing outside at school during recess, kids are not always, you know, very well supervised. It's hard to keep your eye on a lot of kids. If your child is a wanderer, you want to make sure that they have a one-to-one if it's at all possible, and that there's always adult eyes on that child. Also, wandering occurs frequently when a child is in a new or unfamiliar setting, when a caretaker is distracted, and during a family or social gathering. And typically with the family gatherings, what happens is you have, you know, a house full of people, you know, friends, family in the house, there's a ton of adults there. Everybody thinks somebody's watching the child because there are so many adults there, and then you find out nobody was actually watching the child. So we have, you know, a really easy little strategy to avoid that, keep that from happening. Then we wanted to look at where these kids were found. And so you can see that by far, most frequently in these cases that we studied, they were found either in or near water. And that was followed closely by in or near traffic. So those are definitely the most high-risk areas for our kids. And those are the areas where first responders should always look first. The areas that provide the most amount of risk. So we are seeing more cases of bolting or eloping. Bolting is, we describe that as when an individual suddenly becomes frustrated, overwhelmed, and then very quickly leaves their environment. And we believe that there are multiple triggers that can cause a bolting incident to happen. So fears or phobias, auditory sensitivities, that feeling of being overwhelmed and needing to get away, you know, those kind of sensory issues, any kind of frustration or confusion, and communication challenges. Those are huge. If our kids are given an effective means of communication, we could cut down on so many of these cases of wandering, because our kids would be able to say, you know, I want French fries. That's all I want. I just want French fries, you know? But a lot of kids cannot communicate that. So they will just walk out the door at 2 o'clock in the morning looking for McDonald's, right? And they know exactly where it is, you know? But that's the thing, you know, an effective means of communication can be life-saving for our kids. And so these fears and these triggers that we believe are, you know, driving all of these cases do fall in line with the data that we had published in pediatrics. It's all about, you know, the child trying to reach something they enjoy, trying to escape something that's making them uncomfortable, or pursuing a special topic. I'm going to bring you through some case studies that I chose specifically because they're cases that we can learn something from. This is Logan Mitchelltree, and this is an old story. This case was back in 2004, and this is when wandering first got onto our radar. We still think about Logan every day and everything that we do and all of the resources that we've created in the years since his death, because it just touched us very deeply, and we knew we had to do something. So it was the middle of the winter. He lived in Pennsylvania, and Logan slipped out the front door. Nobody saw him walk out the door. His family didn't see him walk out the front door. And so they realized within just a few minutes that he had gone outside, and immediately, of course, went out and started searching, but they couldn't find him. And there was a huge search with first responders and, you know, local volunteers and all kinds of people looking for him. But it was 3 days later before they actually found Logan's body, and he was literally frozen in the woods, not too far from their home. And in Logan's case, you know, we were thinking, gosh, you know, 3 days everybody was looking for this child. There's got to be something out there that can help us to locate our kids. And we started looking for some kind of locating technology. And that's when we discovered that Project Lifesaver was out there, which I'll talk about a little bit too. So in his case, a tracking device probably would have saved his life. As soon as he went missing, they could have initiated the first responders with the receiving units to locate him, and he wouldn't have died in the woods as he did. Benji Heil is a case that I wanted to talk to you about because Benji also slipped out of his house. There was a 6-day search for him, and sadly he drowned in a creek not too far from his home. The thing that we learned from Benji's case is that Benji was walking down the street and was seen by a neighbor. And our kids don't look any different than any other typical kid. So this neighbor didn't know Benji personally and thought, oh, you know, here's this kid, he's probably walking to a friend's house or, you know, walking home or something like that. But he didn't look like he had any kind of issues, and so the man just, you know, passed by, and Benji kept on walking. And this guy has such a hard time living with that, because had he known that Benji had autism, he would have stopped him, and he knows he could have saved his life. What was really frustrating for us with Benji's case is that we were thinking, well, if there was an Amber Alert issued, then everybody would have known. The neighbor would have known, and, you know, anybody who saw him would have been able to help bring him home. And that was when we learned, because we went to the Department of Justice and said, hey, you know, where's our Amber Alert? And we found out that our kids are not eligible for an Amber Alert, and they will not be. We've been trying to get them to do this for years. It's not going to happen. There has to be an abduction and typically a vehicle involved to issue an Amber Alert. So that's not going to happen, but we do have endangered missing alerts, EMAs, that can be issued. Not all states use them. Does Connecticut use them? Are there first responders here? Do you guys do EMAs in Connecticut? An endangered missing alert?
Well, they have a system called Silver Alert, state police.
Will they do that for kids? They will do it?
They'll do it for somebody that's missing.
Okay. Some states do issue silver alerts, even though it's associated with elderly individuals, but there are some states who will do it. And then the other option is the endangered missing advisory that can be issued as well. So that's what we learned from Benji's case, is that our kids do not qualify for an Amber Alert. James DeLaurie was 7 years old. He also slipped out of his own home in the winter. He lived in Canada, up in Nova Scotia. And it was almost the same situation as Logan, where he wasn't missing very long before the search started. But his dog was with him, and there was a search that went on for 2 days trying to find James. When James was found, he was actually still alive. His dog came back, and his dog led the rescuers to where James was. But 2 days had gone by. When they found him, he actually was still had a heartbeat, was airlifted to the hospital, but unfortunately he passed away. The one good thing that came out of that is that Nova Scotia, after James passed away, they implemented the Project Lifesaver tracking system in Nova Scotia and throughout Nova Scotia. And not too long after they implemented it, there was another case in Nova Scotia of a little girl with autism who was wearing a Project Lifesaver bracelet, and in her case, she was located in 9 minutes. Robbie Wood, you guys may have heard about this story because it was all over the news. He was in Virginia. Robbie had been walking through the woods with his dad and his dad's girlfriend, and all of a sudden he was gone. He disappeared into the woods and nobody could find him. And there was a 6-day search for this kid. There were thousands of people looking for this kid, and it took them 6 days to find him. He was alive, and it was a miracle. Nobody could believe that he was still alive when they found him. We don't know how he survived. He had no injuries other than he was dehydrated, and he had some irritation in his esophagus. So he tried to eat something that scratched up his esophagus a little bit, but other than that, he was fine. And what we learned from this case is don't give up, because our kids are so resilient, and a lot of our kids don't have any fear. And it made me wonder, was Robbie ever afraid while he was out there on those 6 days? Was he feeling afraid, or was he just kind of on an adventure? Because a lot of our kids have this really impaired sense of danger. They just don't get it. My daughter's 17 years old. She still doesn't look before she walks across the street. She doesn't understand consequences, safety-wise. Joshua Robb was playing in the school playground and slipped through the fence, and he was missing overnight. And what these first responders did was something that we had been recommending, is to try to draw kids out who are lost by using something that they really like. So maybe play a recording of the mother's voice, or maybe play their favorite music. Or Barney or Elmo, because our kids are like lifelong Elmo fans. You know what? No parents should be subjected to 17 years of Elmo. I'm just getting that out there. I'm over it. Go. Anyway, with this case, they played Ozzy Osbourne music, which was Joshua's favorite music, and out he comes, out of the woods. So they found him safely. That's something to keep in mind. This is Connor, Lori McElwain, who's our co-founder. This is her son, and one of the big reasons why we do what we do. Connor has been a wanderer and a eloper for many, many years, and he has left multiple school settings because he was not properly supervised. He had a speech therapist, one in particular, who felt that it was important for Connor to be working on his independence skills. And so even though Connor, his IEP specifically specified that he was to be under one-to-one adult supervision at all times for safety reasons, she decided she was going to let him walk back to his classroom on his own because he needed to learn independence. So Connor just walked out of the school because Connor is fascinated with highway signs. That's his obsession. He loves to look at highway signs. So he just walked out of the school and headed toward the highway. And as he's walking down the road, he's passed by a gentleman in a car. Guy drove by, and he thought, that kid looks like school age. It's weird that he's out at this time of day. I wonder why he's out. And for some reason, he decided to turn around, and he went back and he started talking to Connor. And at the time, Connor was nonverbal and couldn't respond to him. And he was saying, you know, are you lost? Where do you live? Are you supposed to be at school? And Connor is not answering him. And so he drove around a little bit trying to figure out where Connor belonged. And then he got the police on the phone. And the police came. And then the police took Connor. And they were mean to him because they thought that he was being incompliant or uncompliant, because he wouldn't answer their questions. They were asking what his name was and where he was supposed to be. And Connor's mom didn't know what happened that day until about, I would say it was about 3 years ago, because Connor is now very verbal. And he was able to tell the story about how the police were very mean to him that day. But he couldn't answer their questions. So anyway, thank God this guy picked him up, this Good Samaritan picked him up and did get in touch with the police, and then the police were able to locate the school that Connor was supposed to be at. The kicker is, the school never told anybody that Connor was missing. They were looking for him themselves, but they didn't let his parents know, they didn't let the police know. And Connor was out for a very long time without them notifying anybody because they were trying to cover their own butts. So this kind of stuff is unacceptable. If a child goes missing, you gotta call 911 right away. Whether you're a parent, a caregiver, a teacher, doesn't matter. You can't waste a minute because our kids, so many of them die so quickly, even before a search can be put together. In Connor's case, because he was nonverbal at the time, if he had been wearing any kind of an ID, which he was not at that time, it certainly would have saved a lot of trauma on him. So I highly recommend IDs. Medical Alert, we're actually partnering with them on some stuff right now, but they have a new program, medicalalert.org/autism, where you can go and you can get a free Medical Alert membership along with 2 IDs for your child. So we're going to talk about prevention. We have a lot of resources available at this website we created called AWARE, A-W-A-A-R-E. One of the resources is our Be Ready booklet for caregivers. This is something you can also get on the NAA website, and I'll tell you a little bit about what's in there. Other prevention tools that we feel can be really helpful are, of course, the ID. A lot of our kids won't wear a bracelet because of sensory issues. They don't want to wear it. So we can put a shoe tag on them. Definitely we prefer something that's wearable that they can't take off. But if they absolutely refuse, put something on their shoe. This lower left is a little shoe tag from Road ID that is great, and it easily goes on sneakers. You can also use wristbands to identify that the child has autism or the child is nonverbal. Just something, some kind of identification for somebody who may find your child that doesn't know them. Noise canceling headphones can be really great for kids. If you have a child who elopes and has sound sensitivities, make sure they have those because that may prevent them from wandering in certain situations. Home security is, of course, very important. We have to make sure that we have appropriate locks in our house. Alarm systems are great. We're kind of doing things backwards. I have an alarm system in my home to keep my daughter in, not to keep people from coming into my house. It's the opposite, you know? So it's just very different. Oh, and Vivint Smart Home has a new program as well. I may as well tell you guys about that. Vivint they do home security, smart home security systems where you can control, you know, like your lights and your temperature in your house, but your door locks and all kinds of stuff. And also video monitors and motion detectors. And so you can set up a security system with Vivint under their philanthropic arm, which is a nonprofit. If you have a child with autism, they will base your monthly fees, you know, your monthly monitoring fees when you have a security system, they'll base your fee on your income. So it's really great for low-income families. It can go down to as low as $19 a month, and all of the equipment that they install in your house is free. So all the cameras are free, all the locks are free, the sensors for your doors and windows, so that's something that if you're a parent you might want to look into. Definitely want to have at least door chimes on your doors so that you know if your child opens the doors. Fencing, of course, if you can afford it. You have to safeguard pools. Baby monitors are great. I've used one of those for a very long time so I can hear my daughter, especially at night. Swimming lessons are critical, and more places are offering special needs swimming lessons. A lot of YMCAs will do it, and we have a list of them on our website. So we're going to talk about safety strategies. You need to think about what type of wandering your child is engaging in, and what are the triggers that may cause them to wander. And then you need to address those triggers. You need to work on helping them with de-escalation, calming themselves, coping with the triggers that make them escalate, and then providing them with alternatives to running or fleeing. And you address any known triggers, not only with your immediate family and caregivers, but also with school staff as well, and anybody who's working with your child. You want to understand what their goals are, where are they headed to, and allow for safe exploration of sessions. So I'll give you an example of that. Let's just take the French fries. Let's say you know, you have a child who is constantly trying to elope because there's a McDonald's down the street and they want to get French fries. So a way that you can help to curb that behavior is to actually create a schedule and certain specific times when they can engage in whatever their obsession is. So it might be swimming, it might be going to McDonald's, it might be going out for ice cream, or whatever their favorite thing is. But make a schedule, and a visual schedule, so something that they can look forward to, that they know it's coming, and then they don't feel that need to go get it on their own, because now they know, okay, on Tuesday we go swimming, or on, you know, Wednesday we go to McDonald's, you know. So visual schedules can be really helpful at trying to curb those things. So we use a tag your it system. This is something I started doing with my family because we were hearing, you know, these cases where there were family gatherings and, you know, all these adults around and nobody is watching the kids. And actually had a personal friend, an autism mom, who lost her daughter during an outdoor barbecue. And what happened was nobody was really paying attention to where this little girl was. She went into the neighbor's yard who had just installed a pool, and they ended up finding her in the pool. So what we implemented in my family is a tag your it system, and we literally will just high-five each other and say, you know, tag your it, and whoever's it is responsible for watching Allie and not taking their eyes off Allie until they tag another adult. And that is, you know, that's a way where the whole family actually gets to enjoy whatever you're doing that day. Because during the time when you're not it, you know, you're having a beer or you're chit-chatting with your family, right? And you know throughout the day that your child is going to remain safe. You want to use a bookends approach if you're walking, like Joshua Robb, who got lost in the woods. If you're walking with a child, one adult on each side, bookends. or one in front and one behind. But you have to have, somebody has to either be touching the child or have eyes on the child. We have one of the resources in our Be Ready booklets and our Big Red Safety Box, which I'll tell you about, is a family wandering emergency plan. If your child goes missing, you're going to be scattered and you're not going to know what to do. So I encourage everybody to grab one of these booklets and fill out your wandering plan, just so that you have, basically what you're doing is you're assigning different people to search different areas. You know where your child is most likely to go. You're only one person, right? So you want to assign different people and implement that plan should your child go missing. You also want to provide information on your child to your local first responders. And actually, we just on Monday released a Meet the Police toolkit, which is, I think, a little bit better than just this wandering alert form that we had previously. You can get it at nationalautismassociation.org. But you want to make sure that the police are familiar with your child, and you want to make sure that they have information about your child. Make sure that they enter into their dispatch database that there is a child with autism or an adult with autism that is living at your address, so that if they're called to the address, that's already in their mind. When they get there, they know they're going to be dealing with an individual with autism. Not just in a wandering case, but also, sometimes cases that, are becoming violent. A lot of times the police will be called if a child's out of control. And they need to know going in what they're dealing with, and that, sometimes these behaviors are not controllable, and you deal with them differently with a person with autism than you would with somebody who does not have autism. You want to take steps to make sure that your child is safe at school. So you want to ask questions, you want to go to the school, you want to see the classrooms, you want to look for possible escape routes, and maybe there needs to be a gate here, and maybe there need to be door chimes on these doors that lead outside. You want to ask questions of the staff when you're in for your meetings. Has my child ever eloped and bolted away from the person caring for them? And you make sure that you put into your IEP that you want to be informed of any wandering or elopement incidents that happen, so that you can figure out why they happened and implement strategies to prevent them from happening again. So again, on bolting, these behaviors are typically a form of communication. And the problem is there's unpredictability. So it's like stuff you really can't, a lot of times can't see it coming, because our kids have these impulses that they just can't control. And that makes the bolting incidents particularly dangerous. If you do have a child who tends to bolt or elope like that, we recommend, if they're school age, that the school conduct a functional behavior assessment to try to find out what their triggers are. If you don't already know as a parent, what are their triggers? What's going to make them bolt? For example, my daughter she's very sensitive to specific sounds, like a child crying, or like a high-pitched kind of screech that one particular student was making quite often, and it was really painful for her. So you want to find out what are the triggers, and then you want to implement a behavior intervention plan based on your functional behavior assessment to provide de-escalation strategies and to make adjustments to the child's environment in school, so that you can lower the chances that your child is going to have a wandering incident. You can use a picture schedule or a social story to help your child understand the expectations about not bolting. Again, using the arm lock when you're walking. A one-to-one really should be assigned to a child that's at high risk of bolting or wandering. So some of the things that you can do is develop materials that are going to help your kids to prevent them from wandering. So you can create these materials personalized for your kids. So with Connor, his mom created these emotion cards, because for him, he had a really hard time when he was overwhelmed. It was really hard for him to tell anybody how he was feeling. And so she made him these cards, so all he had to do was touch them or, point to them. And he is a big fan of Winnie the Pooh. And, so she did a Winnie the Pooh themed kind of card for him. But it helps him because when she saw him escalating and knew that, he wasn't going to be able to express what he needed, what he was feeling at that time, he could just use that, and it was a much easier way for him to communicate. She also created some social stories for him, actually for his school staff. And so she came up with a rhyme that Connor could actually repeat. If Connor wants to run, he should run to Miss Kim and say, "Howdy, Miss Kim." And then he could say this: "Running is fun, running is cool, but Connor should never run away from school." And kind of drill that in, by himself, saying that over and over again. You want to be on high alert during certain times. We see more incidents happening after a move into a new home, during vacations, again, the family gatherings. The onset of warm weather, this is the time of year that we start seeing a huge spike in wandering incidents. We're changing, our houses are changing, we're opening up, we have our screen doors and we have the windows open, or hopefully we will sometime in the next few months. So when the weather changes and our homes change, we do see an increase in wandering incidents. So you want to be on high alert. Response, again, you're going to call 911 immediately, no matter what. Even if you think you can find your kid, even if you think you know where they're going, call 911 anyway. You can ask police to implement a 911 reverse 911 system. I don't know if I don't know where in this immediate area you guys have reverse 911. You can ask about it. I do know that it is available to every single police department in the United States through achildismissing.org, and all they have to do is call and ask for it. So reverse 911 is basically your phones will ring. If a child goes missing, the police department is able to call phones within a certain area and alert everyone. There is a child missing in your area, please look. The child was last seen wearing, pair of jeans, a hat, whatever. And that is actually, in my mind, more effective than an Amber Alert. It's more effective than something on the radio or signs on the highway, because it's a phone ringing and people can actually walk out their door into their yards and start looking in their immediate area for the kids. I love reverse 911. You want to implement your family wandering emergency plan if your child does go missing. Make sure that you've provided your child's personal information to the police, and if you haven't, give it to them then. And you want to absolutely search the highest threat areas first. So that is going to be busy streets and, of course, water. And then use favorite things to try to safely attract the child. In the response, and I'm sure you guys heard about this from Bill Canada and people at ALEC, but response is really important. If your child were ever to go missing, you would want to make sure that you mention to the first responders if your child has a fear of, say, sirens, if sirens really bother them, or if they're afraid of dogs, they might not want to use a canine team, or bring it, they may use it to locate the child, but then bring the dog away. And some kids are really drawn to sirens. Some kids are like really into fire trucks, so they might want to bring a fire truck. And some kids you would want to have the flashing lights, and some kids you wouldn't. And these are things that you can let the first responders know. Search water first, even if. I put this in here because we had a very high-profile case in New York City where a boy went missing from his school, and he was believed to have gone into the subway system. And so the first responders that were on the scene, we were in touch with them and we asked for some pictures of what that area looked like. And sure enough, there was water within view of the school. It was the East River in New York City. And we said, you gotta search the water, you have to go to the water. And we were told, no, he's very drawn to the subway. And that's what the parents are telling us, and we really, really think he's in the subway. So that search went on for months, and his body washed up in the East River, I think it was 5 months later. It was tragic. So search water first, no matter what. Even if you think the kid is not attracted to water. They might not like baths, you may not think they like swimming, but they might like the way the water looks, the way the sun's sparkling on the water. There might be some other reason why they're drawn to it on that particular day. And that's the #1 cause of death. Busy streets, train tracks, transit systems, also very common areas where kids are found. So if you met one person, you met one person with autism. Just wanted to show you this, that it really doesn't matter the functioning level. We have kids that are low functioning, kids that are moderate, kids that are super high functioning. But when it comes to risk level and safety issues, they're all at high risk for different reasons. So the the higher risk kids the low functioning kids are more likely to wander or bolt, so they're going to be the elopers. The moderately functioning kids with autism are going to be at risk of wandering to where their favorite places are, and bolting. And then the higher functioning individuals with autism, they typically will get a lot farther away because they're able to safely navigate their way around. But unfortunately, a lot of times they end up getting lost. So it doesn't really matter how high functioning, there still may be risk involved. And of course, when you're searching for somebody with autism, there are different challenges involved because a lot of times, like 40%, that's an estimate, 40% of people with autism are nonverbal. So they're not going to respond when you ask their name. A lot of our kids will not respond when their name is called. They may even run away. They don't understand danger. They may hide from police. All right, so I'm going to talk briefly about tracking devices. There are different types of tracking devices. There are 2 common types. One is a radio frequency device. So Project Lifesaver uses this, and SafetyNet it used to be SafetyNet by LoJack, now it's SafetyNet tracking systems. They both use the bracelets that are in the top left corner, and these are little wristbands that emit a unique radio signal once per second. And so if your child were to go missing, you would call your local first responder agency that has the receiving equipment, and they take their equipment out and they tune into the frequency of that particular wristband, and they use it to locate the individual. The other type of tracking device that's out there now, and there are a lot of them out there, are GPS devices. So similar to ones in the bottom left corner. So these are running on cellular systems, and you have to field test these. If anybody wants to use one of these, I would suggest doing some serious field testing in the places that your child is most often. I've tested a bunch of these units, and I have not found one yet that I would recommend to a parent. Now, you may be in a situation where you need one, and it may not be fabulous, but at least it's something, and go ahead and do that. But when you get it, you have to field test it and practice it, because if you're in an actual situation where your child is missing and you're trying to figure out how to get the signal from your app on the phone and how to read, the notifications and the maps and all of that and locate your kid while you're in a state of panic, that's not a good idea. So if you do have one of those, make sure you test it and practice. To check locations to see where Project Lifesaver is located, you can go to projectlifesaver.org and enter your zip code. And the same thing with SafetyNet. They also have a zip code spot where you can enter that in and see if it's available. I checked for you guys and it isn't. And I'm not sure about Project Lifesaver if they're available here. The nice thing though about those systems is that they're run by first responder agencies. And they, you know, the GPS ones that we would buy just for ourselves, you're gonna pay a few $100s for the bracelet itself, and then you're gonna pay a monthly cellular fee, just like you do for your cell phone. With the radio frequency devices like Project Lifesaver and Safety Net, that is a program that is entirely run by either your police or your fire department. And so they, you guys could do fundraising to get the program started, to get the equipment. It's really not that expensive to start it. It's a few $1,000s. So a lot of times families will raise the money. And if not, the police departments can actually get grant funding from the Department of Justice through the Burn Grant. So if you have any questions about that, you can contact me and I'll tell you, you know, if you have a police department that's interested in doing it, happy to share that information with you. I know you guys had Alec here last time, so I'm not going to get too deep into that. So for resources, I'll close up by letting you know what we have available right now for you guys. At the National Autism Association.org website, we have our Be Ready booklet for caregivers. And this has your caregiver checklist, the family wandering emergency plan, your first responder alert form, some sample social studies or social stories that you can create for your own child, a sample IEP letter if you're having difficulties with the school and you know, you want to make sure that they're taking the wandering issue seriously. And we also have our Big Red Safety Box, which I'm so sorry, I meant to bring one tonight and totally forgot it in my office. But these are available right now. We just opened up another round of these. We have 5,000 of them available right now. So the Big Red Safety Box has our Be Ready booklet in it, so all of those forms that I was talking about, plus a bunch of different strategies that you can use in your home to protect your child and at school. Window clings that can be put on your car and in your home, a wristband that your child can wear, identifying them as having autism. We have visual aid stop signs that can be placed in, you know, on doors or windows or wherever your child is most likely to try to escape from. We have the emotion cards, so the child can identify how they're feeling. You can teach your child how to self-identify what their level of emotions are. And door and window chimes are also included in there. And now we have that shoe tag and on the bottom a wristband from Medical Alert. They're both from Medical Alert, so you get an engraved shoe tag and your choice of either a pendant or a wristband for your child to wear with your personal information on it. So if your child were found, they could be returned to you very quickly. These are free to any parent who has a child with autism through our website, National Autism Association.org. We even pay for the shipping. And that is it. So did you want to take a break? And I'm happy to stick around if anybody has any questions.
So if anybody, there's refreshments over here. If you want to get a refreshment, take 5, and then we'll reconvene. We have a raffle we're going to do, and then we can ask Wendy some questions.
Okay,
All right.
Thank you all so much.